So my name is Nathan Williams. If you listen really carefully, you're obviously going to make millions and millions of pounds from this talk, so I do recommend it. I may be over-promising. But I'm going to talk about a few different tools today and strategies and ways AI can possibly help with funding. I'm going to name a couple of tools, probably a little bit quickly as well. And so to help everyone out, what we've done, if you look at these QR codes here, and I'll show these at the end as well, and I'll put links underneath, all the tools we mentioned and some of the principles will be listed as links that you can access as well. So you may want to take a photo of this or click on the QR code. But if you're struggling at all, myself and a colleague will be able to help. We'll be around all day today. And my colleague, Andrew Collins, will also be delivering another AI session, which will cover which will cover some of the things within these links as well. So let me know if you have any problems later on after the presentation, and we'll get you sorted. And also I'll show the slide at the end as well. Thank you. So, quick introduction. My name is Nathan Williams. I work for Promo Cymru. We're a charity and social enterprise based in Cardiff Bay and with offices in Ebervale and delivering projects across Wales. Just to give you a bit of background as well, so we've got no core funding, so obviously got to work for a living like the rest of you. With the story of funding, I like to start where we actually came from. So like many organizations, it's been a rocky road in terms of funding. And I think my story with the organization started about 9 years ago when I was employed by Promo and I was delivering as a digital project officer. And then within 2 months of me having the job, we had an announcement from Welsh Government that they were going to cut 50% of our funding. Oh dear. So what that meant was that we had to start to look to apply for more funding and work out how we were actually, or what we're actually going to do. So from delivering grant programs to tenders to supplying training. So this became a learning process. Now AI has come on recently and it's been a great help. But I think it's really crucial to acknowledge the hard work and the pressure that we can all be under, especially when jobs are on the line. But when it comes to funding and funding development, the crucial thing I always look for is incremental improvements. How can we improve and get better every day, every week, so we can win the grants, we can win the tenders, we can work in partnership with other organizations. And AI, I made the joke earlier, it's going to make you millions. It's not. It's an incremental solution. It's quite a big one, but also it does bring its own challenges as well, because everyone does have access to the same tool. So part of the session is actually to kind of show you how that you can actually stand out and be unique whilst using AI, and how you can make your responses to bids or tenders different and to represent who you are as an organization. So I'm going to talk through one tool in particular today, the one I use, to give you practical examples of how I use it. But pretty much all the other tools on the market will do the similar, if not exact thing. So I'm going to be talking about LLMs, which I'm sure you heard the buzzword being mentioned. The one I'm going to concentrate today on is Claude, but also in terms of similar LLMs will do exactly the same thing as I'm talking about today. There's also Gemini, and obviously ubiquitous ChatGPT, and Microsoft's Copilot. And also I'm going to chat about one or two other smaller AIs which you may not have heard of. Notebook LM could be one, but obviously you heard about it in the presentation this morning, which is just really cool to hear as well. And so what I'm going to talk about is something called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG for short. This is the process in how you can get the AI to generate answers that are more relevant to your organization. Now, what RAG is a system for essentially uploading your content to the AI, and then the AI can better understand you as an organization. So how I do this is previously I was putting in lots of applications, developing who we were as an organization, writing staff biographies. So I had this kind of like huge amount of content. And what some people have done with things like ChatGPT or these LLMs is when they use it for funding bids, they're not really using this content, the information about your organization. Now, what you can do if you have a paid version of the LLM, so I'm paying for Claude, I'm paying about £17 a month. It has a feature in it called projects. And what I've done is I've gone through all kind of really good funding applications I've written previously, biographical detail about the staff at Promo, and all previous projects that we've delivered. And then what I do is I've uploaded this into Craft, and then what Craft has is then access to this when I'm actually asking it questions. So this is an example of kind of what it looks like. I've uploaded all the content from Promo that is useful for funding. So I've uploaded probably about 200,000 words to a reasonably big organization. The limit is around about 1 million words you can upload, and that's seemingly increasing all the time. So it's got scope to upload pretty much everything about your organization. And then the process of how I use this then when I'm actually looking to apply for a funding bid, and what you can do is once that information is uploaded, then we can look at the application bid, and then we can put in the questions that are asked of the application and say, and ask the AI, so you are Promo Cymru, answer this question with what you know about the information already uploaded, and then the AI will generate a response that is pulling data, pulling the information on your organization, and then answering the question. So this is really, really helpful. But what I would say, the answer it's going to give, it can be a very good answer, but sometimes you're obviously going to have to intervene as well. So when I say this will do the work for you, how I like to say it, it's like having a very, very good, extremely brilliant member of staff, new starter, but sometimes they do some very strange things or say something that's very odd. So it's a case you've always got to check over this work. But what this does is it supports you and helps you. But because it's got all that information, sometimes you may not be able to recall yourself, or you may miss something out, and it'll just help you think. You'll go, oh, it didn't say this, so I forgot that we actually did that previously. And so it helps inform you when you're writing that bid. And what I will normally say is, like I said, it's a 50% kind of relationship. Even with this process of uploading all the information to the AI, don't expect the answers to be, absolutely brilliant. You need to go through, you need to examine it. You're working with the AI. Don't leave the AI do all the work for you. But where AIs particularly excel is when you're doing a few different things. So, for example, if you have a really complex bid or tender with a huge spec, what I find particularly useful is uploading that specification to Claude, and then asking it, am I meeting all these criteria, or how do we meet these criteria based on the information you know about us? Also, I'm probably being recorded. I probably shouldn't say that, but risk assessments. Oh my goodness, AI is brilliant at risk assessments. But there's obviously the warning that once again, there's a risk factor, and as a human, it's really important to go over it. But what I tend to do when I'm doing risk assessments with an AI, I will give it the scenario in which we're working and ask it to generate a risk assessment. And what I find quite often, it actually gives me additional points, things I didn't actually think of in terms of risk. And quite often, with risk assessments, it's one of these things that we do again and again for numerous projects, so sometimes our thinking can get lazy. But with the AI, it does it very quickly for you, and sometimes it just gives you extra time to think, to process the answer of the AI, and to think, oh, is this a risk? I didn't think of that. Or no, maybe something is missing. So partly it's really useful for buying time. And then also in the slightly more rote tasks, in terms of current SWOT analysis, as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, or PEST analysis, I forget the full acronym, political, economic, social, technology. I think we can Google the rest, ask an AI for it. But in terms of actually doing these tasks, AI is really useful, and it can actually help you think in terms of competitor analysis and in terms of what are your strengths based on the information that you have shared. And now, so that is how I generally, in short, how I use Claude. So I use the projects function on Claude to upload the content to act as a retrieval augmented RAG system. And then that is how I will work and develop funding bids. And I'll use the questions from funding bids to then ask the AI, can you answer this with what you know as Promo Cymru? There are some other developments in terms of AI which are potentially useful for funding, but the caveat, the new functions are probably not as good as they could be, and this is kind of the worst they will be at the moment, and they're only going to improve. So one to highlight as well is using ChatGPT, you can create what are called custom GBTs, and this is where you can set out something like ChatGPT, a series of instructions to carry out a task for you. And what I've done with this custom GBT is I've asked it to be able to provide a fundraising or funding search for me to search for any relevant grant or tenders for my organization. So what I've done, I've given it background information about the kind of funding the Promo is looking for, what our skills are, and I've highlighted a range of websites very useful for it to go through to return answers to me. Now, at the moment, I would say it's relatively hit or miss. Some of the stuff is kind of generally useful, but it misses a lot of things, and it's not fully reliable. But the reason I highlight it is because this is potentially the future, and this is the way it's moving. Over time, this is likely to get better, improve, and so something that's worth keeping an eye on. But it doesn't replace the traditional emails, networking, and still manually keep an eye on websites yourself. But it is something occasionally it might help you see something that might slip through the net. And now just to touch on something else, Notebook LM, which was mentioned earlier. This is different to things like Claude, ChatGPT, and Microsoft Copilot. What Notebook does is you upload information to it, and then you can ask it questions on that information. And crucially, Notebook LM returns the best factual answers out of any AI. And so when it actually comes to funding, what I tend to do and how I tend to actually use Notebook LM is that I will upload a funding bid that I've written to it before I'm ready to submit, and then I will ask Notebook LM, okay, pretend that you are the person reviewing this, and can you come up with a series of questions for me or spot any weaknesses and go through those. And then it will actually examine the bid, and it will come back with potential things I haven't considered, or it will say this point's worth expanding upon, and it can act as a really, really kind of useful guide. And Notebook LM has got some really, really cool features as well. One is that it can actually create a podcast from the content that you've uploaded. So if it's the case that you're about to go attend an interview for funding and you really kind of want to familiarize yourself with a bid, you can have Notebook LM to be able to repeat over parts of the funding application and talk it through like it's kind of a friendly podcast. So if you're someone who learns through audio, this is a very useful tool to actually help go over that application. And then another tool, which will be in the list we'll supply at the end as well. This is called Otter AI. Now, this is a transcription tool, which is one of the brilliant uses of AI. Just for a hands up, who uses some kind of transcription tool already in their organization? Great. Okay. Well, these tools quite often are really, really useful. So Otter AI, where I find this really beneficial is you can either use Otter AI in Zoom meetings, in team meetings. Those also have some inbuilt options as well. But where Otter AI excels is obviously if you have permission, you can have it on your phone. And if you're doing community consultation or speaking with a group of people, you can just take it out and then you can record what people are saying. Otter AI will then transcribe that for you, which is kind of like really, really useful when you're looking to get that community involvement for a bid. Quite often you've spoken to someone, you can remember the gist of the conversation, but this records exactly what is said. It gives you a full transcription as well as recording the audio, and really, really useful when it actually comes then to pulling quotes out for use in bids. And what's also really, really important point of AI is I'm kind of going through the tools at the moment and what they can do. But obviously, lots and lots of organizations are now using AI for writing funding applications. It is exceptionally useful. But what a lot of funders have seen is that they are overwhelmed by AI. So a lot now are starting to put out their principles of usage. And these are from the lottery. So a lot of funders have followed suit. But I think the lottery principles are kind of really good and give a guideline of things to consider if you are using these for a bid. So what they say, first of all, is use it, but with caution. So all the things about we discussed, so you've got to make sure essentially what I read there is that it is your own work that is also representing the communities you serve. And it says focus on the unique needs of communities. With AI chatbots, what they're doing quite often is returning the most likely answer. And so you need to inform it, you need to give it the content so it can come up with a bit of a different answer, but it also the needs of communities is something you have to put into the bid. AI is not going to do that for you. So if you want to avoid a generic answer, making sure the voice of your community comes across in any funding bid is more important now than ever. Also, be specific. So as I said, AIs are quite often the general tools. They become general probability engines. They're going to come up with the most probable answer. So try to be specific when you're answering and make sure that the answer reflects you as an organization. And one that they've seen where there's been major issues with is don't use AI for budgets. AI is actually very, very good at textual responses. With any kind of mathematics or counting, it's improving, but generally it can be poor and is more likely to kind of hallucinate and come up with the wrong answer. And that's something you very much don't want if you put a lot of work into a funding bid. And quite often, writing the actual finance side can be rushed, but don't rely on AI for that side of an application. Also, make sure you check for inaccuracies. I've spoken with a lot of funders, and what a lot of them are saying is they're seeing more errors now than ever due to the use of AI. Even people copying and pasting, here is the response, and it's embarrassing. So you have to check. It does stuff for you. It makes your job quicker. Don't be lazy. Don't become lazy with it. Read, reread, and just make sure, once again, that you're happy with that work. Also, something I haven't actually touched on here, but it's super important, is be careful with sharing data. Now, when you use the free versions of these tools, and there are free versions to be had, typically all the free versions of LLMs will use your data to train future models of theirs. So if you're putting any data in, essentially, you're losing ownership of that data. Now, it may be the case of if it's organizational data, that may be a risk, that you're willing to take if it's, generally publicly accessible information, but it's crucial that we're not putting in personal data from any person, because that data, we don't know how it can end up. If you are paying for the tools, typically they do have opt-outs as well that you can click so that that data is not shared to build future training models. But mistakes can always happen. These companies, are likely very much targeted to be hacked. So it is always a risk. Even if you click the button, it doesn't divorce you from the risk. So it's worth considering, or what I would say generally, is just avoid putting any personal information in whatever model, be that free be that paid is something to generally avoid. And what we don't know fully at the moment, I think anyone, is the environmental impact of AI. There's a lot of talk about having a huge environmental impact, and then there's also something saying, oh, it's not that much. It's like one question is like putting a microwave on for 2 seconds. At the moment, the companies who are creating these AIs are not really publishing the data about their environmental impact. So until they do, it's a very hard thing to assess. So be aware, if you are an environmental organization, there are some really good guides from Friends of the Earth in terms of how they actually use AIs. But I would say generally, you don't want to use it for everything, and it could obviously have an environmental impact, but also it can be impersonal. I use AIs a lot. Something I don't use AIs for is responding to people's emails, because that wouldn't be me. That wouldn't be my voice when it's written in that form. Also, something we're thinking about is uniqueness. So as I touched on earlier, AI simply makes everything, gives you the best general answer. The more content you can give it, like with the RAG model, will help come up with a unique answer, and that is what will help you sometimes win funding bids. But what I would say is, with the principles these funders are putting out, some of them are great and really well thought out, but you've also got to bear in mind that there is a funding officer reading your application, and they have to get through hundreds, maybe thousands of applications. And if those applications start reading the same, they start picking up in terms of, oh, I can tell which AI used this. Someone said, oh, I could tell this was written by ChatGPT, or I could tell this was written da-da-da. The AIs have giveaways in them quite often. So once again, I would always think of it like the AI is doing 50% of your content, and you change it and also give it the context through a RAG model. And that way, you're not going to upset the funding officer, and they're more likely to say, oh, this is a good bid, and pass that on, rather than you getting dismissed at the first sort. Also, in terms of AI text detection, there are tools that some funders will use to give them a likelihood in terms of if something was written by AI. But so this is something that exists and something you could use yourself. But typically, what I would say generally when I'm speaking to funders, it's mostly the funding officers themselves. It's not always sophisticated software. They can read it and just say, oh, it's got a lot of bullet points. I think this is AI. And that is quite often, you've got to make it human, you've got to understand their role, and you've got to make it unique and reflective of your community needs. And this was a term, prompt writing, which was probably really popular a few years ago. And it was around about writing the best prompt to come up with the most unique answers for the AI. Typically, this term has fallen out of favor now, because the AIs have gotten so good at understanding your intention that it doesn't particularly matter how well you craft the question you ask it. It will respond with the best answer, and it'll try to guess your intention. So even if your grammar's not perfect, it will try its best to understand the question and answer that to the best of its ability. So rather than crafting the best question, once again, I sound like a broken record, but giving it context is the most important thing. Uploading content through things like the RAG models is super crucial to making sure that AI actually understands your organization, what you do, past successes, and that is the way you're going to generate the most unique responses that best reflect what you do as an organization. But what I would say generally, there are certain principles that always remain when it actually comes to having a successful bid. So one is obviously involve your community, make sure the community voice comes through. Partners as well, partnerships. We work in partnership promo with dozens of organizations. We support them with digital, we support them in engaging young people. So it's crucial that you actually look to actually work with people, build on your strengths, and also the kind of the problem with AI as well, I'd say, is everyone else has access to the tool as well. So once again, you've got to think, how am I going to do the most unique application? And quite often, that is in terms of the community voice, but also working in partnership with other organizations who may have strengths that you don't, is a crucial thing to factor in. But I think the most crucial thing, I think generally, is to keep the human in the loop. When it actually comes to these applications, not many people actually like writing a funding application. It's typically an add-on to a job, and it can be really tempting to offload the work on AI and sometimes lose the human voice. So whenever it's the case that you are using AI for a funding bid or AI for anything, it's really crucial you involve people in the process, but also your own voice. AIs can come up with the most general answer, but sometimes they can't tell a story really well because they don't know your story. So you've got to help the AI in telling your story. So always think of it as a 50-50 relationship, where you're sharing knowledge about yourself and the AI is helping you craft something quickly that's grammatically correct, that has some structure. But once again, you're informing it, you're leading the AI, it shouldn't be leading you. So it's just really crucial to keep the human in the loop of that process. So thank you for bearing with me today and going through lots of these probably jargon words that I've thrown up. So we've given lots of time for questions as well. And my colleague will also be running another session in the afternoon going through these tools in a bit more practical detail as well. And once again, I'll just put up those links so you can have a look at those and download or read any of the tools that we mentioned here. So let me know if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
Wondering, when you use these projects, or is it like a folder that's yours and private? It won't be shared with other AI users?
Yeah, so there's an option. It's a very good question. So there's basically an opt-out within Claude or within ChatGPT that you can click, my data will not be used to train AI models. It used to be, one reason I really used to recommend Claude is it was an automatic opt-out. They never used your data to inform the models. That changed because obviously there was financial pressure on Claude, and unless you click that button, then it will share your information to inform other training models. So it's kind of a really crucial consideration. Some people might be fine with it being used to train it. The interesting thing is I was speaking to one funder once, and I was really, really careful about not sharing my information with AI. And then when I spoke to the funding officer, I said, I use AI to actually write the synopsis. And they were using free AI to write the synopsis. So they were inputting my data, and I was being shared anyway. So sometimes you can't win as well. So it's just, but it's worth thinking, as you as an organization, what are you comfortable with? And if you don't want to share that data in terms of the AI you're using, you do have that opt-out, but that's typically only if you are paying for the models.
Diolch, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn am y cyflwyniad, diddorol iawn. Da ni gyd yn gorfod meddwl am y pethau yma. So ni'n hoffi gwybod, I'll say it in English in a minute.
We shall come back.
Oh, dear, okay, great. So, the question is, pam Claude te, os y reswm dros ddefnyddio hwnna yn hytrach na un o'r rhai eraill ar gyfer yr elfen o ran bwydo pethau'r cwmni mewn, ynde? A ni jyst eisiau gwybod pam bod chi wedi dewis hwnna. Ac oeddech chi'n sôn am beth oedd chi'n defnyddio Otter ar gyfer trawsysgrifio. Da ni'n ffeindio fo'n anodd cael rhaglen sy'n trawsysgrifio i'r Gymraeg yn dda. So, da chi wedi dod ar draws rhywbeth fel yna?
Yeah.
Os da chi wedi dall y cwestiwn?
Yes. Yeah. I'm very glad I'm ateb yn Saesneg ond yn diolch yn iawn. Yeah, diolch. So, why Claude? The answer's been, I was formerly a journalist and a copywriter, so I placed kind of really important for me, the quality of the writing. What I've found with Claude, I've paid for all the models. I paid for Claude, ChatGPT, and I use Copilot. What I find with Claude, and this is personal preference as well, don't say, this guy told me to use Claude and it's brilliant. But what I found is Claude is it writes in the most human style, the style I'm more comfortable with. Also, typically ChatGPT is a standard that 95% of people are going to use. So that has particular tells. So if a funding officer was to read a ChatGPT text versus a Claude text, then it is the case that Claude is going to sound a bit more human as well. Also, I did like Claude's really, they had a great ethical thing where they didn't share your data, as I mentioned earlier, but just 2 months ago, they rolled back on that as well. So it's these things, all these companies as well, they have huge money invested in them. They want to make a return. So the ethics of them can often quite be questionable. And I'm not saying Claude is tremendously ethical, bearing that in mind, but also the content they put up about learning and about training with Claude is typically to an excellent standard. And I find it just slightly, when I'm reading the response back, I find it less annoying than ChatGPT is my honest answer. In terms of Otter, why we use that, and I get onto the Welsh language as well. Otter is what we found. We use a lot of these tools, and Teams and Zoom also have their inbuilt versions. Otter is great because it transcribes, records everything. It just doesn't give a summary. One thing, if you're doing a lot of transcription and listening back, Otter is particularly useful. It's a case that it will do the transcription for you, and then if you read it and you go, no, it's got something wrong, you can click on that part of the text, and then you can listen to the audio. So when it actually comes for practical transcription, it's extremely useful. And also the fact that, unlike those add-ons for Teams and Zoom, you can have Otter AI on your phone. So if you're doing a consultation, if you're speaking one-on-one, you're like, oh, it's okay if we record this, and then you've instantly got that available. In terms of the Welsh language, I know there's work being done at Bangor University, a lot of work, and there's a new department in Welsh Government, the Digital and AI Department for Welsh Government, and this is Welsh translation is a real big consideration for them at the moment. So they are working with, I think, ChatGPT and possibly a few amongst others to look to resolve this. What I found personally is, obviously I've got a South Wales accent when I'm actually speaking Welsh as well, and so I have tried this out, and so I'm not sure, I can't speak a North Wales accent as well. What I found is that when you find is if you ask it to translate Welsh for you, it's awful, absolutely terrible. It can make stuff up. If you ask it to respond in Welsh to you, it's often very, very good. But it's extremely unreliable. So I think I'm really reliant on Welsh Government here, who has some of the size and some of the clout, maybe not much, and Bangor University is doing this work. So I am hoping that Welsh transcription tools will be improving. Also, what's kind of really crucial for organisations like Welsh Government and Bangor University is having access to these kind of large data sources of the Welsh language from different accents, south, west, north, to different terminology we use. So at the moment, I think they're trying to access that data so they can inform the models, but obviously that data doesn't exist to the same extent that it does in English, that it does in larger languages like French. But I'm hearing a lot of positive noises, and I've spoken with the interim head of AI and Digital in Welsh Government, and he's told me that a lot of good work is happening. So I don't want to overpromise, but hopefully that will improve in the future as well.
Diolch yn fawr. I'm just asking, does any of the AIs, if you put the information in Welsh, will it give it to you back in Welsh?
Yes.
Is there a better one than other to use?
Well, I've tried them all. They're really, really inconsistent. So I can't say definitive. I think, given the Welsh Government is basically we're in talks with ChatGPT, that will potentially could be a leader. At the moment, I think they're pretty much between Claude and ChatGPT. I have used for that case. I think they are both of similar kind of levels at the moment.
Diolch yn fawr.
Lovely. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.